our meeting format. We will consider the cases scheduled for this meeting individually as follows. Staff will make a presentation of the case, and then I will give the commissioners an opportunity to ask questions to staff. After the staff presentation, the applicant or their representative will have up to 10 minutes to present or provide comments on their project if they so choose, followed by questions from the commissioners. Once staff and the applicant have addressed questions from the commissioners, we will open the meeting for the public hearing. If you would like to provide comments on the agenda item, please wait until I open the public hearing. When I open the public hearing, I will ask if anyone would like to speak. And if you would, please unmute yourself, state your name. Once we have the name of everyone who would like to speak, I will call the names in order. When your name is called, you'll have up to 3 minutes. Speaker may allot their time to another speaker for a maximum of 6 minutes. If you wish to allot your time to another speaker, please indicate so when I open the public hearing. Please remember that all comments and questions must be addressed to the commission. Please be patient while we organize the speakers during the public hearing portion. You also have the opportunity to provide comments through the Q&A section located on the right-hand side of your screen. Please provide your full name, address for the record. Your comment will be read by staff. After everyone who has asked to speak has spoken, I will close the public hearing and provide a few minutes of rebuttal time to the applicant if they so choose. Following this set of questions, I will ask the commissioners for a motion and a second, followed by deliberation and any additional questions to staff or to the applicant. Then I will call for a vote on the motion. If the applicant or a member of the public has questions or concerns following a vote on an agenda item, please communicate those to the recording secretary outside of this meeting so that staff can follow up with you. You can provide your contact information through the Q&A section and request follow-up. You can call the planning department at 512-930-3575, or you can email historic@georgetown.org. I'd like to remind everyone to please state your name before you make any comments. That includes staff, commissioners, applicants, and members of the public who speak during the public comment portion of the meeting. If you are a member of the public, please also provide your address. The first agenda item is okay, so we have item D, consideration and possible action to approve the minutes from the March 25th, 2021 regular meeting of the Historic and Architectural Review Commission. Do I have any edits or additions to the minutes? Okay, not seeing any, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chairman, I move for approval. This is Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Do I have a second?
Austin Curry, second.
Okay, the minutes are approved as written. I will take a vote. Commissioner Parr, I'm abstaining. I was not at the last meeting. Commissioner Morales?
Approve.
Commissioner Johnston?
Approve.
Commissioner Curry?
Approve.
Commissioner Hyde?
Well, I wasn't there either. Do I vote?
No.
Okay.
So Terry's abstaining. And Commissioner Walton?
Approve.
Okay, that motion carries. Thank you. All right, moving on to our next item. This is item E, a public hearing and possible action on a request for a certificate of appropriateness for an addition that creates a new or adds to an existing street-facing facade at the property located at 1601 East 17th Street, bearing the legal description lots 3 and 4, block 9, Nolan Edition. Britton.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Parr, and good evening, Commissioners. Britton Bostic, Downtown and Historic Planner. The first application before y'all this evening is for an addition that creates new or adds to an existing street-facing facade. It is not an addition to the historic home itself. It's for a detached utility shed. So this is the rendering of what's proposed. These are very common. We do have these in the Old Town Historic Overlay District. So it's a simple prefabricated shed with siding and roofing that are similar to residential structures, and then a small door and window. The property is located in the Old Town Overlay District in an area that's just to the north and east of the Annie Pearl Elementary School. So this is over by Louise and 17th Street. If you look at the map of our historic properties, you can see this is the medium priority structure, and it's also surrounded by medium and low priority structures. This is an area of Old Town that developed a little bit later in time, so after 1940 and mostly between the 1950s and 1970s. You can see this is at the edge of the Old Town Overlay District, so we do have historic structures identified, medium and low priority, just across the street and beyond that are outside of the district. But since this is within the historic overlay district, this addition of the utility shed, which would be part of the street facade, requires Harc approval. So this is the 1964 aerial photo. The HRS had estimated this to be built in 1970, but we see that it's a bit earlier. So that was kind of a fun find. And then in 1974, we see that not a lot of changes had been made to the site. My 1974 photos don't tend to be as clear, but we can at least see the building outlines, and it looks like it was taken in winter because not a lot of foliage. Today, there are a lot of trees. And so this is proposed to go in the back right corner of the property where you can see outlined in yellow. It is proposed to be located outside of the setbacks. No setback modifications are being requested for this structure. And so, whoops, a little bit fast. So here in the current photo, you can see the house of the subject property on the left of the photo. And then you can see kind of this open area. The shed is proposed to go kind of in that back corner. And you can see a few other accessory structures from adjacent properties kind of nearby. When staff reviewed the application, we found that it complied with the applicable approval criteria. No signs are proposed as part of this project, so that was found to not be applicable. 2 signs were posted on the property and 1 comment has been received in favor, no comments opposed. And so because this is a simple addition in character with the overlay district, other similar structures exist, no setback modification was requested. Staff is recommending approval of the request. And commissioners, with your motion, you have some options as always: to approve as presented by the applicant, to deny as presented by the applicant, to approve with conditions. If you do have conditions, staff would ask that you be clear about those in your motion, and also an option to postpone. And if you find a need to postpone, staff would just ask that you let us know what you need in addition in order to make a decision. So with that, I conclude my presentation, but happy to answer any questions, and the applicant has joined us here in the meeting.
Thank you, Britton. The applicant is here. Is there anything that you would like to add to the comments that have been made by Britton?
I don't know how to communicate with you. No.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Oh, you can hear me. Okay,
We
never
can
mind.
hear-
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Yes, we can
Didn't
hear
know
you.
that.
Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, that it's a very good looking, all wood structure that's very far set back from the road and would help me with storage considerably.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, commissioners, what questions do we have for staff or the applicant before I open up the public hearing? Okay. Not seeing any questions or comments right now. I will go ahead and open up the public hearing. Do we have anyone signed up to speak on this item or any comments in the chat, Nat?
No, ma'am, I do not see any comments in the chat, and I have not, no one has signed up to speak.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, not having anyone signed up to speak, we will close the public hearing. Commissioners, what questions, comments would you like to make, or I will entertain a motion?
I would make a motion to approve as presented by the applicant.
Okay, that's a
Michael.
motion by Commissioner Walton. Do I have a second?
This is Terry Hyde. I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. So I have a motion by Commissioner Walton and a second by Commissioner Hyde to approve as written. Let's take a vote. Commissioner Parr, approve. Commissioner Walton,
Yes.
Commissioner Curry,
Yes.
Commissioner Morales,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnston,
Yes.
and Commissioner Hyde.
Approve.
All right, thank you. That motion carries. Okay, Britton, can you? Okay, thank you. Okay, so bear with me here. So this is item F, which is a COA 2020-59 COA. This is a public hearing and possible action on a request for a certificate of appropriateness for an addition that creates a new or adds to an existing street-facing facade to change a portion of the front facade to a screened porch, the addition of a porch, patio, or deck for the addition of a new front porch, a 1 by 6 inch setback encroachment into the required 15-foot side street setback for the addition of a porch 13.4 inches from the side street west property line, an addition that creates a new or adds to an existing street-facing facade for a 2-story garage addition, an 18-foot 5-inch setback encroachment into the required 25-foot street-facing garage setback for the garage to be constructed 6 feet 7 inches from the side street west property line, a 2-foot 6-inch building height modification to the required 15-foot maximum building height at the side street setback to allow the dormer to be 17 feet 6 inches at the setback, a 3-foot building height modification to the required 15-foot maximum building height at the required 10-foot rear south setback to allow the garage addition to be 18 feet tall at a distance 11 feet 7 inches from the rear south property line, the addition of a porch, patio, or deck for the addition of a new second floor deck between the proposed new 2-story garage addition that the existing 2-story accessory structure, a 4-foot 6-inch setback encroachment into the required 10-foot rear south setback for the construction of a second floor deck 5 feet 6 inches from the rear south property line, replacing a historic architectural feature with a non-historic architectural feature for the replacement of the 32-inch front door with the 36-inch front door, replacing a historic architectural feature with a non-historic architectural feature for the replacement of a second floor window on the accessory structure with a door for access to the proposed second floor deck, replacing a historic architectural feature with a non-historic architectural feature for the replacement of 3 historic windows on the west facade of the historic main structure with a new French door and 3 windows that are proposed to be relocated from the north and east facades for the creation of the screened porch, and a 0.08 floor to area ratio modification to the 0.45 floor to area ratio for the Old Town Overlay District to allow a floor to area ratio of 0.53. Britton.
Thank you so much, Chair. So to recap everything that you just read, this is a request that would kind of change a portion of the front facade of the house to create a screened porch. It would expand the front porch, which would require a setback modification. There's also a request for the addition of a 2-story garage, which would require 1 setback modification, 2 building height modifications, and a floor to area ratio modification. It would also be the addition of a second floor deck between the existing 2-story structure and the new garage addition. That would have a setback modification associated with it. And then it would also replace the front door with a wider front door. It would replace a window with a door on the existing 2-story structure to create access to that second floor deck. And then some windows are proposed to be kind of moved and replace some existing windows. And so I'll try to go through all of that in order, commissioners, and have a lot of information to share with you. If you were part of Harc or were part of the meeting back in January, this was brought before the commissioners for a conceptual review previously. And so a conceptual review is not a meeting in which a decision is requested, but rather a meeting in which the commissioners are asked to give feedback based on a preliminary evaluation with the design guidelines, any setback criteria. And so I'll have a slide that captures the feedback from that meeting, but this is a slide to open that is in response to the feedback from the commissioners. The Harc commissioners asked if they could understand the relationship between the proposed garage addition and the existing house, and the applicant has provided this rendering that helps show not only the size and design, but also the proposed materials and what the finished appearance is proposed to be. And so this property is located at the corner of 13th Street and Laurel Street. So kind of right across from Southwestern University. When you say right across, think the fountain at Southwestern University and then go about a block south So this is a medium priority structure. There's two medium priority structures on this property. One is the main structure, and then there's a second 2-story detached structure that's also on our historic resource survey as medium priority. And this is just about a block to the east of the Olive Street National Register Historic District. You can see with the light blue overlay there. And then it's also surrounded by a mix of high, medium, and low priorities and a few non-contributing. So some of the homes that are surrounding in these blocks are not considered historic or not on our historic resource survey, at least yet, maybe in time. And so some of the commissioners will remember this is a house that was owned by Paul Young. Mr. Young was a baseball player and also coach at Southwestern University. He had this property when the subdivision was platted, so that was kind of an unusual find. And he ended up having Lot 1 in Block 1 of the Coffee Heights addition. And so Mr. Young is known to have built this house. It looks like it originally had an open front porch, which has been enclosed today as a living space. And so where the dashed lines are being shown, you can see it on the map on the left, and then I kind of blew it up on the right. It's a little bit grainy, but what we're looking at is the carport or porte-cochere attached to the house was there in 1925. And then what we also see is what appears to be a porch, an open porch, kind of as part of the front facade that's been enclosed. That's the portion that the applicant is asking to be able to kind of reconstruct as a screened porch. So it would still have some enclosure and some screening, but it would act more like a porch and less like the completely enclosed living area that it is today. I believe that's used as a front bedroom. Between 1925 and 1940, it looks like Paul Young built his 2-story accessory structure. We can see it there on the map, and then we start to see additional structures populating this part of what became Old Town. And so the structures that you see kind of right next door and then at the end on the corner lot, those were all there by the 1940s, but not a lot was on this block to the south. That came later on. And so from 1934 photos provided by Special Collections at Southwestern University, we're able to see this house, although unfortunately not in great detail. What it does help us see is that by 1934, that 2-story detached structure, which I believe had been originally used as a garage, had already been constructed. So it was built sometime before 1934, probably pretty close to 1934, I'm guessing. I wish we had a little bit more clear detail of the front of the house. The photo was pretty blurry at that distance. So I'm not able to give a really great picture of what I think the front of the house looked like. I do believe it's very possible that that front of the house has changed over time, although I think it changed much earlier than in its history than later on. So in this other photo from 1934, we can see the back of the house, which oddly enough ends up being much more clear. You can see this agricultural area to the south and east. We have a lot of large lots that are still undeveloped. We still have some farm homes on the edge of Georgetown. It's really hard to imagine that Southwestern was once the edge of town, but it certainly was. And so a lot of, I talked about the house in the application previously being part of a later development, and these photos really help to illustrate that those indeed didn't come until after World War II. By 1964, we have a lot more houses in the surrounding property. So we can see this property. We can see it looks like not a lot had changed, although definitely a lot of trees had grown up in those 24 years or 34 years with the photos. And then by 1934, we're still seeing similar footprint, similar development pattern on the ground, although the photos, again, are not quite as clear. You can see the water tower on the far right of the photo that now has the Southwestern logo on it. To give you a little bit of reference as to where this is. The 1984 Historic Resource Survey photo showed that what was there in 1984 is very similar to what's there today with the enclosed front porch, the porte-cochere, and then we see the 2-story detached structure in the back. Commissioners, one thing that I want to share with y'all that is I've done since we put this presentation together and since staff provided that information on Paul Young, I've come to understand a little bit more about another of the previous owners that I wanted to share quickly. So a woman named Uta Merzbach was a prior owner of this house. She not only owned this house, but she owned the houses in this block facing onto 13th Street. And so Uta has a really incredible story. She and her parents were Holocaust survivors of the Nazi Holocaust in Germany. She was born in Berlin, came to the United States as a teenager, and she was a really talented mathematician and math historian. She worked for the Smithsonian Museum. Her father worked for Southwestern. I believe there's a Mersbach room at Southwestern named for this family. And so this house, even though I can't necessarily identify changes to this property with Ms. Mersbach, I can say that one of the previous owners has a lot of notable history, and I'm learning more as I go, and certainly hoping to learn a lot more about Ms. Mersbach and the kind of homes that she owned. She apparently, from what I understand, resided in kind of the two houses over, if you're familiar with that block. But she did own these houses kind of as a collection and stored a lot of her personal items. And I understand one of the houses had a spectacular collection of books that were Miss Mersbach. So just to share a little bit more of the history that I've been able to learn just this week, and always looking to understand the history of these properties as best we can as we share that information with the commission. And so as we go to current photos, you can see we've got there's kind of an open space between the existing house and the two-story structure, and that's where the applicant's proposing to put that two-story garage addition. And so I'll go back to the conceptual review that was held on January 14th of this year. Just to recap for commissioners who have newly joined Harc, and also for anybody who wants to kind of go back a few months to the conceptual review. So what was presented then is very similar to what is presented today. And so the feedback that the commissioners gave to the applicant was that the proposed porches appeared compatible with the style of the house, but more information was needed for the window product proposed for the screen porch. And that was for the screen porch area that I talked about. It looks like originally might have been an open porch on the front corner of the house. Harc also gave feedback that additional drawings and/or streetscape photos were requested to better understand the relationship between the proposed garage addition and the existing historic structures. The proposed garage addition required several modifications for setbacks, building height, and floor to area ratio, and was found to only partially comply with many of the criteria for approval. The commissioners recommended reconsidering the project design to reduce the number of modifications needed for the project design and to bring more project design elements into compliance with the design guidelines. And then lastly, the proposed French door in the west facade was noted at the time to not be a style compatible with the style of the historic main structure, and the commissioners recommended considering a more compatible style. And so the rendering that I showed previously was part of that response, Harc requesting to help understand the relationship between the existing house and the proposed addition. So I'll go to the site survey. This is the existing property showing the one-story existing residence and then that two-story rock building toward the back southeast corner. Sometimes I get my directions mixed up. And so this drawing is showing where these different project elements are proposed to go. So you see a green rectangle. That's the proposed new front porch. So the applicant is proposing to take their existing front porch and expand it using stylistic elements that are similar to the craftsman style of the home. That would require a setback because of the location of the house currently. So we have a 20-foot front setback requirement in our zoning code and a 15-foot side street setback. And so this would encroach a little bit into that side street setback, not the front setback. The applicant is proposing to also add 2 bathroom areas on either side of the existing enclosed stoop. We know that that stoop has been part of the house since at least 1934 because of the photos, but it kind of serves a utility function right now, and they're proposing to use it more as a hallway to go between the existing main house and the new addition, and then to construct additional bathrooms for the house on either side. I understand that the bathroom situation currently for the house is just one single bathroom. And then we have the 31 by 24 footprint for the proposed garage addition. That would be 2 stories in height, garage below with some utility areas, and then living space above. And then in the red rectangle that you see, that's the deck that's proposed to connect the second floor of the garage addition with the second floor of the existing 2-story structure. And in order to facilitate passage between those two second floors. They're proposing to replace the window in the historic structure with the door, and then put that deck. Because that historic structure is built basically right on the rear property line, that deck would encroach a little bit into the setback and then would require a setback modification. So we'll go through elevations and drawings now, showing in more 3D what the applicant is proposing. So we see here the proposal to expand the front porch using those similar features. Kind of you see under the roof, you see that triangle with those supporting pieces. They're proposing to use that same design and basically take that triangle shape, expand it, add an additional column, repeat the existing columns, but have an asymmetrical front porch. That's something that would be consistent with a craftsman style. Craftsman homes were often asymmetrical. And so the part of the house that you see there to the left of the front door, that is what we believe to be the enclosed front porch. The window size doesn't quite match the windows on the right. They are older, certainly, and they do match in historic character, but it looks like that was enclosed kind of shortly on in the house's history, and probably because the Youngs may have needed additional space on the interior. The front door is only about 32 inches wide. You can see the front door kind of highlighted in red in the image on the top right. And so that's the front door that they're requesting to widen and replace with a 36-inch front door. Right now there's a storm door and what's described as a builder grade door behind it. And the door that they're proposing to replace it with is a style, it's a finished wood, and then it's, or a stained wood, I guess I should say. And it's proposed to be more in keeping with the craftsman style of the house. You can also see in the photo where the door, or the drawing where the door is highlighted, some indication of the screen windows. So this is some more information that they've provided about what that would look like on the exterior. It would still essentially look enclosed, but those screen windows would allow for basically sitting and enjoying the breeze without the Texas mosquitoes getting you for a good part of the year. And so this is a window system that would have those screens on the exterior. The windows would not come all the way down to the floor, but would rather just kind of be a partial height window. And then with kind of a similar sill height to the windows now. And then the way that the window itself functions, that you can open and close, you can kind of close it off to the weather or open it to the weather. They kind of accordion up and down and stack onto each other. So some example photos are what's provided in the bottom right of this slide. Here we go back to the new front door. So this is showing what the applicant's proposing to replace the existing front door with and get that wider opening because some furniture and other things are a little bit challenging to move through the 32-inch door according to their letter of intent. And so going to the garage addition next, this is the area highlighted in blue, but it has these bathroom portions also that would be kind of a minimal change to the street facade. They are proposing to use that portion as kind of that smaller connector piece that our design guidelines reference. And so this is a slide showing the existing elevations of the house. The ridge on the house on the roof is 18 feet tall. And so just giving a sense of what the existing house is. And then the ridge on the addition was 29.7 feet. That's come down a little bit in height. And so this is what they're proposing now. The rendering on the left shows kind of what the ultimate design goal is for the property and what the expected final outcome would be. And then you can see the three-dimensional drawings in addition there, giving a couple of different views of that garage addition. This is the proposed floor plan, just showing how things would connect. The garage is proposed to have an office space and a laundry, as well as a stair up to that second floor that's accessed from the rear. So what would be prominent or visible as part of the street facade would be the garage doors, and then the dormer windows that are proposed to be up above that garage door. So the applicant lowered the ridge height about 5 feet. And so the addition that they're proposing now, how it's different from the conceptual review is it's about 5 feet shorter total. And so this is showing the street elevation on the left and then the back elevation on the right. The back elevation is what would be facing interior to the property and would not be facing the street. There was a little bit of an adjustment to the dormer design from what was initially proposed. So I think another window has been added and the dormer feature is a little bit larger than what it was last time. These are elevations, the left and right elevation, basically showing the side facing the main house and then the side facing the property to the south. Those are kind of minimal windows, minimal openings, and also showing that lower roof height. And then the relationship of the height of the dormer roof compared to the overall roof height. The proposed materials are to use a fiber composite or fiber cement lap siding. So kind of a traditional siding material appearance, white asphalt shingles, which is what's on the existing historic structures now, single hung vinyl windows, and then these are the proposed doors that you see. So having a pattern that is often associated with a craftsman style. And then moving forward to the window replacement. So the applicant shared in the conceptual review and also in their letter of intent that they are planning to remodel the interior of the house, and that would provide them with a larger kitchen space. Right now, the kitchen space would only have this small window you see. So I've got a kind of a red rectangle around the 4 windows in the portion of the wall that's proposed to be changed. That single kind of square shaped window in the middle would end up being kind of the only window for their kitchen. So they're proposing to take out the double window and replace it with the French door, take out that smaller square window and kind of this window on the end, and then take these double windows that they would be able to salvage out of changing the front porch and kind of install those over here on the west side so that they would have larger windows on this side of the house, still using the same windows from the house. But the kind of real change would be the door instead of the window. That's proposed to be a double door, as you see indicated on the drawings. And so current context, this is a property with quite a mix surrounding it. This is kind of a transition between older Old Town and newer Old Town, if you will. Even though this house was kind of the very first house in this subdivision, which was platted kind of in the I think it was in the 1920s. So this is a little bit earlier subdivision. But this kind of showing where the garage addition would go there in the red square. The whole property is outlined in red, and then you can see surrounding properties. So the properties surrounding do have a variety of attached and detached garages, and then some accessory structures. There's quite a mix of ages. And so this is a portion where we kind of transition from a lot of 1- and 2-story houses with a lot of 2-story heights, and we begin to lead into a lot of 1-story heights because the mid-century development patterns had a little bit different lot configuration and also tended to be single-story in height. And so Laurel Street kind of acts as that dividing line, commissioners. You saw in the earlier kind of plat and in the photos. The whole reason for that, and this house and 2 of the other houses kind of on its section of the block were kind of early. They're kind of earlier in that time period. And then after that, we began to kind of transition to the mid-century ranch styles, minimal, traditional, et cetera. So just kind of an interesting set of surroundings for this one. The applicant has also provided some heights for surrounding structure, showing that their house, the subject property, is about 18 feet tall at the ridge. The accessory structure toward the back is 21 feet tall. And so that would make this garage addition about 3-4 feet taller than what's existing on the site, but a similar height to the house next door, which is, it's a 1-story house, but really kind of a story and a half in the height. It's about 24.5 feet tall. They're at 1204 East 13th Street. And so here's another photo showing the current context just from a street view and a street perspective, giving you an idea of the context for this property. And so when staff reviewed the application, we found that it complied or partially complied in a couple of instances, did not comply. And so I want to walk through that. The application was complete and had enough information to allow adequate review and action. For partially complies, that was because that project in its entirety required setback building height and floor to area ratio modifications. And so it complied in some ways with the Unified Development Code and in some ways required modifications. That's why that's partially complies. The application was found to partially comply with the applicable design guidelines. In some cases it complied, some cases partially complied. I believe there might have been one case of does not comply. And then the general historic, cultural, and architectural integrity of the building structure or site is preserved. In that, staff found does not comply. And the reason why is because the insertion of an addition this large just really changes the relationship of the buildings on the site. The proposed structure is larger than either of the existing structures. It's taller than those structures. And so as a later addition, it really kind of changes the perception of the site. We do believe that this would be able to be clearly distinguished as a later addition, but it would obscure the medium priority structure that's located kind of to the back corner of the property. And then on criteria 6, new buildings or additions are designed to be compatible with surrounding properties in the applicable historic overlay district. Staff found that did not comply. And the reason really has to do with the exceeding the Florida area ratio. And so the Unified Development Code establishes a Florida area ratio maximum of 0.45 or 45% for properties in the Old Town Overlay Historic District. What that means is that the size of a building or the amount of building that can be placed on a single lot is limited to 45%. And so in that case, staff is not aware that other properties surrounding have exceeded that limit. And so that's why in that particular criteria, we found the request to not comply with it. In terms of the overall character of the applicable historic overlay district, the Old Town Overlay District is protected. Staff found that partially complied. We found that several of the changes proposed would be compatible with the overlay district, but that the size of the proposed garage addition would be pretty large in comparison to the existing structures on the site. And then also just has a different relationship to the street than a lot of the surrounding structures. No signage is proposed, and so that was not applicable. There are also additional criteria for a request for a setback modification in the UDC. And so staff found, there's 2 slides for this. And so staff found that the request, and there are a couple of setback modifications. So just generally, the request complied or partially complied with the applicable criteria. A few of the criteria were found to not apply. And so on the places where staff found partial compliance, those were specifically the scale of the addition compared to the original house. That's for the garage addition requiring the setback modification for the side street. The size of the proposed garage addition compared to similar structures within the same block. And then whether the proposed addition or new structure would negatively impact adjoining properties, including ability to maintain. That's kind of more focused on the setback modification for that second floor deck. There is a potential for negative impact just because there are not kind of a history of second floor decks with setback encroachments. But that was a partially complies, not a does not comply. And so when we get to building height modification approval criteria, there were 2 building height modifications that would be needed for the construction of the garage addition. And so in that, staff found that the relationship of the proposed project to the existing structures in the immediate vicinity would not remain consistent. We believe that this would create a very different relationship with the structures on the street, because we're not seeing structures in the immediate vicinity having this same kind of building height encroachment, if you will. But as far as views to and from the courthouse and the town square, that fully complies. And so as I wrap up my presentation, 2 signs were posted on the property, 33 letters were mailed. Staffers received 4 comments in favor and 2 opposed to the proposed project. And so Harc received those comments. There was 1 posted with the agenda, and then also there were several that were mailed to the commissioners this week. And so when we get to staff's recommendation, this is a 3-part recommendation, Commissioner. So I'll go through each of these 3 parts. Based on what I laid out, based on the approval criteria and what's provided as guidance in the Unified Development Code, staff is recommending approval of the request for the front porch addition and the 1.6-foot setback encroachment needed for that, the replacement of the front door with the wider front door, and the change of the facade to the screen front porch, as well as the replacement of windows with the new door and relocated windows on the west facade of the main structure. Staff is recommending approval of the garage addition and the 18-foot 5-inch setback encroachment with the condition that the garage be 1 story in height. And the reason why is that at 1 story in height, the garage addition would not exceed the Florida area ratio established in the Unified Development Code. Staff did not find that there were kind of any special circumstances or kind of exceptional reasons why the floor to area ratio needed to be modified. And so staff is recommending, because of that, denial of the 2 foot 6 inch building height modification, the 3 foot 0 inch building height modification, the addition of the deck, the replacement of the window with the door in the historic accessory structure, and the 4 foot 6 inch setback encroachment for the deck, and also the 0.08 floor to area ratio modification. If I can sum up, what staff is recommending is denial of the portion of the request that would be related to exceeding the floor to area ratio limit, and all of the pieces of the project that would be related to exceeding that limit. And so as usual, commissioners, you have options when you make a motion: to approve as presented by the applicant, to deny as presented by the applicant, to approve with conditions. If so, please be clear in your motion of what those conditions are so we can capture them for the record. And then also to postpone. The commissioners do need to make a decision following a public hearing within 35 days. And if you do need to postpone, staff would just ask that you let us know what information we need to bring back to you to make a decision. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer questions. The applicant has also joined our meeting and I believe would like to make a presentation to the commission.
Thank you, Britton. At this point, so the applicant has joined us. Are the Craigs? Okay, I see Julie. Are you on the phone?
No, I'm seeing you. on
Okay.
the-
Okay, hey, Julie.
Hi.
We just don't see you on camera, but we hear you. So I understand you'd like to make a presentation to the commission?
Well, I wanted to give some more information regarding the document that the Firth, Scott and Susan Firth sent. They sent 2 pages to Britton saying why they disagreed with our presentation, with our remodel. So one thing they said in the first sentence or the first paragraph is they talk about the door. The door that we have now was definitely not the door that was originally here. It's hideous. It's 30 by 80. We're proposing a 36 by 80 and a very nice, gorgeous craftsman style door in keeping with, being good stewards of this house. And with regard, he also talked about the movement of the windows. So we're a medium priority home. The high priority home at 1009 South Elm, Linda and Greg Austin's home, they both enlarged their door to 36 inches, and they also were able to move their windows around just to give more symmetry to the front facade of the house. And they're a high priority. So I'm just thinking as a medium priority home, it seems like our request should seem a little bit inconsequential since we're actually reusing the same old wood windows and we're just moving them to the kitchen. Our existing home with only 2 bedrooms and 1 bath is very small. We bought this house with the intention of adding a portion in the back with 2 more bedrooms and another bathroom, and then the laundry room and an office. Having a 2-car garage would be ideal. So that's the way that goes. Another thing that the Firths brought up on their second page was they talk about those wood windows in the place that we're going to have the screen porch. Those wood windows were not part of the original house, like Britton told you earlier. Those were added later when the Youngs had twins and they decided they needed to shore that up as a bedroom instead of just having it as a screen porch. With regard to the windows in the addition on the 2nd floor and down below, to tell you the truth, we didn't even notice them on the drawings from either one of our artists, the architectural artist nor the 3D rendering. And he was talking about them being 4/4 windows. No, we're not using those. We're using on our conceptual plan, page 12, we're using those single hung windows that look just like the windows that are in our house right now. Anything else? Oh, and also, Britt and I got 5 letters of approvals and 2 denials. You only showed 4.
That's all that staff had received as early as today. But if you're aware of another one, happy to share that with the commission.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Julie. Is that all you'd like to say at this point?
I'd like to field questions.
Okay, commissioners, do we have any questions for Britton or the applicant at this point? This is a public hearing, so I am going to need to open a public hearing as well. But do we have any questions right now?
I have a question. This is Terry Hyde. I'm forgetting why, and I read your letter, the garage that you're adding on, that you want to add on, is a garage on the lower floor, and it's going to have a living space on the top floor.
Correct.
And then it's going to connect to the stone house that is essentially set up the same way. There's a storage on the bottom and living space on top.
Yes.
And so are those containing the same family? Or are those for different, are
Well,
those all for you? Are those,
we were going to use, we'll definitely use the ones that are above the garage. That apartment over there is set up on its own water and everything, and had been used as an apartment for years. I don't know what we're gonna do. We're thinking about Airbnb-ing out that apartment. Or,
but so what, is there a reason you'd want it to be connected to the garage if it had,
well,
if it
just,
was being rented?
well, in case, my mom's still living too, so it might be a situation where my mom's over there in her own space over there. So we just wanted to be able to get to that easily without having to go outside and in the elements, because you have to enter that stone building from the
Mhm.
ground, obviously,
Okay,
on the Laurel Street side.
okay. And then my other question is, on the front of the house, I mean, that's going to really change the look, although most of what you're doing is still within the craftsman style. But I mean, is there a reason you're making what's currently, I presume, perfectly fine living space into screened in porch? And then, that's kind of causing you to have to add on more and more to the back of the house? You
Well-
just want a screened in porch? I mean, I understand that, but.
Well, okay, so we met 2 other families that put a screened in porch in, and we fell in love with them. And that is very small because it was originally a porch. So
Right.
right now it doesn't have hardwood floors, it's got linoleum in it, and they just walled it up. There's an
Okay.
outside door there. So it's really small for a bedroom. It could be a bedroom. We're not using it as such.
Okay. And then you talked about the door. Were you talking about the door, the front door or the side door on Laurel Street?
The front door is 30 by 80, and we want to make it 36 by 80.
Okay, and that looks like it's going to be replaced within a reasonable style.
Oh, yeah,
The
of course.
side elevation, to me, that door, the French door, with, the porch covering over it,
Uh-huh.
looks out of character to me. Did you consider that, or I don't know if anybody else agrees, but
Well, you guys told me last time that you wanted more of a
Is that
craftsman look. What?
is that it right there?
That's
Yeah, but
where it
that's-
is, but that's not what it is gonna be.
Okay. Okay, the rendering has the proper,
Right.
okay,
But there's 2 windows there right now. And just for maximum light, we wanted to put 2 craftsman style doors that look like French doors, because we're going to put a little patio out there.
okay,
We have our lot is really odd because from the street to our lot line is 15 feet. So we have a ton of unusable space.
right, okay. I don't know. I think there's something about the porch covering over that door that is reading off to me, but I could be wrong. I just wanted to,
Well, I just
That
put
again.
that up there. I think it would look more like the dormer. I was working with,
okay,
it would look much more like the dormer, to tell you.
okay, okay.
Terry, do you have any other questions?
Not right now.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Do you have any other questions or comments for either staff or the applicant right now? We are going to have additional comments and questions after the public hearing.
It's Catherine
I-
Rouse. I agree with what Terry has said, and I was going to raise the same issues.
Thank you, Catherine. And this is Amanda. I concur with the door and the two doors on the side elevation. And the awning, to me, are not in character with the style of the house. So that would be my one comment for now. Okay, Julie, do you want to make any other comment before I open up the public hearing?
No, we did.
And I have a question.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Go ahead.
Or two.
Go ahead.
So one is for the homeowner. I think I heard you say that the windows that were being proposed that we saw in this presentation are not the windows that you want to use?
Please.
No, the windows that you
Oh,
see,
no.
the windows in the addition above the garage, those we are not using. I hadn't even noticed that they put crisscross windows in there, tell you the truth.
That last,
That only came to my attention when Scott and Susan Firth pointed it out. I hadn't even noticed it, and I don't know why, but we're going to use the same single hung windows that are all through this house. On all
Okay,
the
so the comment, the windows is about the garage addition, not the ones on the,
existing house.
no, so Britton, it's the new screened-in porch. It's not those windows,
if you can go to the rendering, that would be
not
helpful.
these. You're not talking about these, right? You're talking
No,
about,
those are in the front of the house. That's the new screen porch. Those are we're removing those four windows from that room and transplanting them over into the kitchen.
Britton,
right. I just want to clarify that your comment was not about these windows, but rather it's about the windows on the garage.
Correct.
Okay. And my second question, I think when Commissioner Hyde was asking about the door, you said something similar, that basically both pictures that we have are not actually what you're going to be using. So this picture here, the awning above the door is not correct. And maybe the doors themselves are not correct. And then the other picture shows a different set of doors that are also not correct. Is that right?
No, the French doors here are the doors we would use. They're craftsman style doors. The awning, the guy that I had this 3D rendering do, every time I made a change, he charged me $80. So this is a very expensive little endeavor just to get this drawing so you guys could understand it better. So I didn't go back to him and have him change that out, but it would look like the dormers. I wouldn't put the little metal one there. And the windows that are in the dormer will be single hung, just like the ones on page 9 of our conceptual plan.
and the windows that you see on the house to the right of the French doors there, those were the windows that were on where the front left part of the house is, where we're taking, and we'd like to turn that into a screened in room. Those are windows that we're going to take from there and
Put in the kitchen.
put money into them to make them properly functional and put them on the side of the house where the kitchen is, where you see in that picture on the right.
Yep, got it. So my last question, I guess, is for Britton and or Sophia or Amanda. When we do this and we go through and we approve or deny whatever, it's based on what we're seeing, right?
Britton, do you want to answer that? And then I'll give my comment.
Trying to unmute myself. So one of the options that the commissioners have when they make a motion is approval with conditions. And so what happens as part of this meeting and part of the discussion is that elements can be clarified of what's being proposed, and elements can also adjust in what's being proposed. And so if the commissioners ask for clarification and that's provided by the applicant and we need to capture that in the motion, we absolutely can. And that way staff can record that correctly in the document that follows Harc's decision. So if there is a need to specify, for example, what the kind of awning is over the double doors that are proposed. If Harc wants to specify that that awning needs to match the roofing style of the dormer addition, we would be able to do that. If Harc wants to specify that no awning can be attached, we could do that. And if Harc wants to make in their motion an approval that includes some of the project, but for example, not the inclusion of those double doors, that can be in your motion. And so we do have the opportunity to work with exactly what's being presented. And we also have the opportunity to make some adjustments in terms of what the commissioners ultimately make a decision on. I hope that answers, but if not, please let me know.
No, it does. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Any other questions or comments at this time? Okay, so this is a public hearing, so I'm gonna open up the public hearing. Do we have anyone signed up to speak on this item or any comment in the chat? Staff?
No, ma'am, I do not have anyone in the chat space who has signed up to speak. We do have 2 folks following along as attendees, but they have not made any contact with staff about making any comments.
Okay, thank you. So not having anyone signed up to speak, we will close the public hearing. And so at this point, commissioners, this is our time to discuss this item, to make a decision about how we'd like to move forward. I will start. So my comments begin with our conceptual review back in January that we have read over in the packet. I have concerns with the lack of changes that have been made to this project to get it into more of a complies status. Specifically, the Florida area ratio issue that is exceeds our UDC. Those guidelines are set by our city council, and I would have concerns with us making changes to a Florida area ratio with no justified reason to do so. I also feel that the mass and scale of this building is too large, this addition, and the height, whereas I appreciate a height change being made, I do not think it is significant enough to account for, again, the mass and scale of this addition. I also feel that the windows do not fit into the original style of the house. That may be adjusted by what the applicant just stated. But again, not seeing that in the presentation is somewhat concerning. And then I would say looking at the surrounding area, we have to take into consideration what is around us. And I don't feel that this large of an addition is in keeping with the surrounding area, which is part of our criteria. And then finally, I do believe that we talked significantly about the reasonings for adding a door on the side facade, on the 13th Street facade. I don't have a problem with a door being there, but I do think that we need to clarify what type of door and what that awning would look like if that is approved moving forward. So for me, this requires too many modifications, and I think we need to talk about, what the best way forward is with this project. So those would be my comments. Anyone else? What comments or questions do we have for staff?
Well, I guess I would ask Julie if they'd considered, building a garage, a modern garage that's more useful for your cars, and then using, the 2-story structure that you already have as the office and extra space you need that way. I mean, I know it would presumably need, interior work, but it's nice to have that extra structure already, so.
Thank you, Terry. Any other comment? I do have a question for Britton. Britton, one question that I have is if we were to, make a modification to a 1-story garage addition, who would that have to go back to for oversight? Because I would be concerned about approving a structure that we have not seen at this point.
Very fair question, Chair. And so if I can back up a little bit in the presentation. So The applicant has laid out both in their letter of intent and in the conceptual plan, and I think it was, I'll go back to the site plan. I think it's fairly easy to see that given the location of the existing structures on the lot, it would be difficult to construct a garage at all, even a one-story garage, without the setback modification that it would allow it to be closer to the street. They did point out that they have additional room basically between their property line and the curb that gives them a deeper effective setback, if you will. So this is not a garage that could be right up on the curb just because that's the city's right of way and not their property. And so I think with a garage addition at all, we would need to have the setback modification be part of that. Because it's proposed to be attached to the house, there's not a limit on the size, for example. So if the garage were to be detached from the main structure, it would be limited in size to 600 square feet because of the size of the house based on our Unified Development Code. But as it's attached, they could have the 31-foot by 24-foot size that they're proposing here, as well as those bathroom additions, for example. On the height and appearance, that is something that the commissioners could either postpone a decision on the application to allow the applicant time to come back with a revised design that included a single story, or the commissioners could, for example, do a conditional approval. So your option to approve with conditions. And what that could look like is for example, a one-story garage that would have a similar appearance to what you're seeing here in a rendering. It would have the materials that are proposed, the fiber cement wood siding, the garage door style that's being proposed. It's a double door that has these panels that are kind of within the style that the applicant was looking for to be compatible with their house. It could use the same asphalt shingle roof materials as the existing, and it could have the exposed rafter tails. So where you see kind of the wood roof members sticking out at the eaves, those are called exposed rafter tails. That's part of a pretty typical craftsman design. And so if you can imagine what you're seeing in the rendering, but just take that dormer feature off, shrink the height, and probably adjust the roof slope to be more similar to the house. That's something that the commission, if they chose to, could kind of give some specifics of what they would be willing to approve. And then with that kind of guidance, either staff could work with the applicant to develop a design consistent with that. And then given that direction from Harc, as long as it met those parameters, could be part of the approval. Or again, we could kind of postpone and give the applicant the opportunity to come back with a new design if the commissioners wanted to see that design prior to approval. A decision on this particular application would need to be made within 35 days of this public hearing. And so if that were to be kind of too short of a timeline for feasibility, the applicant would also have the opportunity to come back to the commission with a new design at a later time. So those are some of the options available, which include, I think, potentially approving a design solution in this meeting.
Okay, thank you, Britton. Okay, what other comments do we have? Michael, do you have a comment? You're unmuted, so.
I do. So I have a lot of things. So if any of it is not clear, or if I'm not, anyway, just interrupt me if it's not clear. So I've made some notes here. So the first thing that jumps out at me is that we're being asked to review 13 items, and it just feels like a lot for one project. You know, it's a lot to digest. I have reviewed these materials, all of the materials, each of the last 3 days. And I did it that way on purpose to try to look at it and pause, look at it again and pause, to try to fully understand what we're talking about. And then I'm listening to all the comments here as well. So number one, it just seems like a lot of things that we're talking about, and it's hard to I understand the value of a project and the vision and the hope of the property owner, and it's hard to separate them out. And therefore, it's hard for us to separate them out. The second thing is, out of 19 items, by my count at least, 9 of them, almost half, are either partial compliance or not compliant. And then of the remaining, most are either not applicable or what I would call an administrative item. So is the application complete? In my experience with items that come to Harc, it's usually the favor is compliance, with a few partial or non-compliance asking for compromise. In this case, it feels like the majority or near majority are either partial or not compliant. And then really the two big things that stuck out in this presentation are the floor to area ratio and the fact that it's a UDC item. It's not a guideline, it is code. And that a statement was made, and based on what I was looking, that the addition is larger than either structure. And I believe if we add them together, the addition is larger than both structures together. I might be off by a few feet, but I think that's the case. I was listening to Ms. Commissioner Hyde's comments about the accessory building and figuring out a way to tie that in with the main structure. I also understand the value of a garage. I wish I had a garage, a 2-car garage. And, I think, the recommendation or a comment that was made about making a 1-story garage and then pairing that with Commissioner Hyde's comments about coming up with a plan that merges the 2 structures and possibly with that garage would make more sense. And lastly, just to add some positivity to it, I'm okay with the front door. I'm okay with the porches, the screened in, both of those. And I like the idea of moving windows that exist from one side to the other. I think those are all good projects. I'm not sure about the door, the new door, but it's primarily because of the picture I'm seeing and the awning portion. So if a motion were to be made by me, I would say that we would need to see a more accurate rendering of what that would be like. But I agree with Commissioner Parr that it should be probably a single door. I also would say that I'm trying to remember exactly what Britton said, but something about approve with conditions on the garage. I don't really want to see us do that. I think I would rather see a new proposal for a garage completely. If we start trying to specify roof pitch and the dormer and other details of it, then we're getting into a level of taste and personal preference that maybe we shouldn't be getting into. And we should leave that up to the homeowner and their architect and come back with something that matches the UDC requirement and sort of incorporates all the feedback that we've heard here tonight. And I think that's it.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Any other comment?
I'd like to make a comment, Faustine.
Okay.
I won't say it near as succinctly as Michael did, but I completely agree. I don't have any problems with many of the changes that are going to the main structure, to the house. I would like to see a more accurate description of the side door, whatever that's going to look like. But I would not be inclined to vote to approve the garage addition at this time, just because of the UDC guidelines. And I also would rather the applicant come back with a design that matches the criteria more succinctly based upon their discussions with their architect and builders. Thank you.
Thank you, Faustine. Anyone else would like to make any comment right now or ask any questions of staff? Okay. So the last thing I'll say, just as follow-up to Commissioner Walton and Curry, is that this is too large of a project, in my opinion, for us to approve with conditions. I would concur that a postponement with a redesign would be most appropriate, in my opinion. There's just too many moving parts here for me to feel comfortable with approving something that we haven't seen. And I would encourage the applicant to be sure that that renderings are what is going to actually be used on the project. And I concur that I think the front porch changes are appropriate and in keeping with the style. And I do love the movement of existing windows and repurposing those. So I think those are good steps. But I think working on the proposed addition is a direction that we need to consider moving forward. So any other comments or questions? And then if the applicant would like to say anything else.
Madam Chairman, this is Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
To me, this is a good example that perhaps we should have a workshop prior to a meeting to go over these kinds of items, these kind of details, separately from our actual meeting. Might be more useful, more productive, particularly something this involved. So, Madam Chairman and Nat, if y'all would, and Britton, if y'all would consider the concept of a workshop on things like this in the future, I think that would be nice. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Steve. Anyone else? Okay, I do want to give our applicants, if there's any, things you'd like to say at this point based on the comments and questions that you've heard, I'm happy for you to do that at this time.
The concept of a workshop, I think, is a fantastic idea. For us to be able to maybe work with staff and to have, if you had a workbook of what is acceptable coverings for an awning, we could have just grabbed something that you guys already approved of. If there's 4 or 5 that would be in possible opportunities, we could have found one that would work. So yeah, we're trying to work and do this with y'all, and we're trying to make this a magnificent place and a magnificent house. Right now, it isn't even close to that. We've already put quite a bit of money into the foundation. We've already made a commitment to this neighborhood, and working with Harc and having it be an easier process, I think is something that y'all should strive for.
And also, I want to point out that on page 12 of
27.
our conceptual plan, it's right there. It says we're single hung windows lift from the bottom while the top window remains stationary. And the next page talks about the French doors. So even though that conceptual plan that I paid $800 for is not correct, I still had it correct in my own presentation. So if you read that, I think you would have understood it a little better.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so no, if we don't have any comments or questions, any additional, then I will entertain a motion.
Faustine Curry, I make a motion to postpone the project for further discussion.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion to postpone the project by Commissioner Curry and a second by Commissioner Walton. Let's take a vote. Commissioner Parr, yes.
Can I interrupt? On a postponement, what will allow us to not have to re-notify and what will allow us to confirm that we're within the established timeline that the commissioners do need to make a decision per the UDC. If we could set a date, so it is 35 days to the regular Harc meeting on May 13th. That would be a Thursday at 6 p.m. If y'all would entertain including that date in your motion to postpone, then we'll have a clear date set for this to come back to the commissioners, if that would be acceptable.
Okay, thank you, Britton, for making that adjustment. Faustine, you want to redo that motion, please?
Yes, Faustine Curry, I make a motion to postpone the project for further discussion to May 13th at our next Harc meeting.
Okay, do I have a second to that?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Curry to postpone to 35 days, which would make that meeting on May 13th. And we have a second from Commissioner Walton. I'll take a vote. Commissioner Parr, approve. Commissioner Walton,
Yes.
Commissioner Curry,
Yes.
Commissioner Morales,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnston,
Yes,
and Commissioner Hyde.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That motion carries. Okay, we're going to move on to our last agenda item, which is item G, which is updates from city staff.
I don't know that we have a lot of updates, except that we'll have some commission business in the next meeting, so we hope everyone can attend. We have the annual kind of election of officers, we have some bylaws, and then we will have, we're planning to have one case that got posted for notification yesterday. And then we will have an update on the design guidelines for everybody. We're very excited. We are just about ready to have the draft to y'all for your look and comment and review. And so we will do a preview of that in your meeting on the 22nd. And then on April 28th at 3 p.m., we are going to do a virtual open house for the design guidelines and present the draft of the update to the public. We'll do a presentation. We'll release it online, make it available to people. We can email it out. People can come to the planning office and visit us and get a print copy if they need one. We'll be available to answer questions, but we'll start with that open house and kind of walk through that update, and then we'll have that available for a few weeks for people to review, look at, give us comment on. And then following that, we'll be going to City Council planning on May 25th to present that draft to council, get their feedback, kind of give an update, and get our kind of final directions as we look to move forward, hopefully toward approval. So y'all will have a little bit of homework to do coming up starting at the end of this month, but we're so excited to bring this to you and bring you an updated set of design guidelines for your use and perusal. So that's the big update for today, but there might be other updates.
Thanks, Britton. Nat, do you have anything to add? Or Sophia? I don't know if she's still on.
Nothing to add. Great work tonight. As Britton mentioned, we do have that virtual open house, and more information is online at historic.georgetown.org. And you can check the city's Facebook page for a save the date, and a press release went out today. So we appreciate you helping get the word out, and we look forward to your feedback on the 22nd when we visit with you.
Okay, so one question, Pam, just one second. I have one question regarding, what is the plan for moving back to council chambers? Kind of where are we with COVID and the city staff regulations there?
No direction yet.
Okay, all right, just checking. Pam, welcome. Can't hear you, Pam.
Yeah, just wanted to say I thought it was a great discussion tonight. So that's all.
Thanks, Pam. Appreciate that. Okay. If we don't have anything else, it is 7:20, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting for this evening.
Catherine Morales, I make a motion to adjourn.
All right. Do we have a second?
I'll second. This is Terry.
Okay. So we have a motion by Commissioner Morales and a second by Commissioner Hyde. Let's take a vote. Commissioner Parr, yes. Commissioner Walton. Commissioner Curry.
Yes.
Commissioner Morales.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnston.
yes.
And Commissioner Hyde.
Yes.
All right. Thank y'all. Have a good week.
Thank you. You too.
Say, Britton, I just have a quick question.
Sure.
Do you know the history of the name Coffee Heights, or that neighborhood, where that came from?